From Courtside of the Virtual Hardwood, it's the NLSC podcast, episode number 382. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host is Derek. You know him in the forum as D43, and he is D4384 on Twitter.
Happy to be here again. Andrew, I'm feeling so refreshed.
Refreshed?
I have had so many games recently with the NLSC community, with people from the NLSC community using Parsec, actually getting on the sticks and playing against, people from the NLSC on various different games from, past and present. And it's just really, really fun. And it's just been a really good week of gaming, the last couple of weeks of gaming, actually. But, between connecting with you and playing NBA Live 10, connecting with Sticky Fingers today, and we played a game of NBA 2K19 using the 93-94 roster mod, playing with Stildo using the Stildo 33 using the 2K19 retro rosters, Hornets on Fire as well, who's part of the roster making team for NBA 2K19, King J Mace, playing games with him as well. I played NBA Street against him. We played with him as the host. We played some NBA 2K21, etc. I'm just Simon Lee, who mods NBA 2K16 and NBA 2K17, and he's a forum member as well. We got a full game in of NBA 2K17 using my UCTR mod. It's really refreshing to actually get on the sticks with these people.
The community's really taken to Parsec, much as we have, because we've talked about this. It's been our recurring, not recurrent revenue, recurrent fun, to use refer back to last week's episode title, that we've had so much fun with Parsec on Live 10, a few other games, but we're still trying to get some other more up-to-date games to work, and we have some ideas there, which we'll be trying in the near future. But yeah, you've spearheaded this initiative, and you've thrown it out there to the community. And people are really taking to it, and they're finding out the joy that we've had playing head-to-head with somebody not having to worry about a random opponent, the toxicity that comes from that. We've talked about that on many occasions before, how that's a problem. Not a problem with head-to-head play like this, and people are really taking to Parsec, and it's been cool to see, and I love seeing the highlights that you've been putting out there.
It is wild. It's just wild, too, the difference between playing the computer, or like you said, playing somebody toxic. But more importantly, a lot of these people who are doing these mods and whatnot, they're playing mods. They're using mods, so they're playing against the computer with them, right? They're not playing against another human. But the difference between playing against the computer and another human being is just night and day.
Really
because human is going to give you're going to have a lot more fun playing against a human. A human is going to give you an entirely different experience as an opponent. Playing against them and whatnot. And it's just so refreshing. It's like playing, I know we're not local, like Sticky Fingers when we played today, he wasn't in the room with me. But, it's human versus human gameplay, and it doesn't get any better. It was a really fun game today.
I think what I also enjoy about it, and we've talked about this in our games, how it's always sporting, of course, how it's a very realistic style of play. We're not looking to cheese. We are looking to play with the players as they play, whether they be retro or current or whatever. And it seems that other people share that philosophy, and it's really cool that you've been able to meet and connect with people in the community that share that philosophy, and we're just wanting to play good, clean, virtual basketball and a realistic style. It shows that that's not dead, and it may show why a lot of people have shied away from the online scene, as popular as it is. There are people that want that style of play, that realistic style of play. And we talked last week about how realistic stats aren't always king, and how it's not about, if I need the bucket and I've got the drive, I'm not going to pull up and take the shot just because I've dunked too much in this game. You play to win, you compete. But it's still overall realistic. And clearly a lot of people are interested in that. And it's great to see. And maybe it's because we're in that older demographic and connecting with other people in that same demographic. But it's nice to know those people are still there playing basketball games.
Well, a few things. One, the rosters absolutely help. When you're using custom rosters and there's special attention to detail on the players and the players play properly, you can't go out there with Rory Sparrow and score like 50 points, right? You can't do it in the game because his abilities aren't good enough in the game. So you have to go to people, you have to go to the Mitch Richmonds. If you're using the Warriors, you got to go to the Latrell Sprewells a little bit more, etc. So if you have a good roster, it can make you, if you really want to compete, it can make you have to play a little bit more realistically, right? Post up the players who are strong in the post, go to the mismatches, all of that stuff. So that is definitely key. As far as demographics, I got to say, um, a few of the people that I've connected with on Parsec are, I want to say, in their early 20s. So
Oh,
they're not
really?
technically a demographic. Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Cool.
yeah. So, and I'm just so impressed with everybody I've played against. I got to be completely honest with you with the way they play. From Simon Lee all the way to Hornets on Fire to Stildo 33. All the ages that I've played with, I'm just so impressed. Some run plays more than others, but they all play very sound defense overall. They're all, they're using players to strengths. They're just really fun games with good players that I've had, and it's just so refreshing. And the other piece I wanted to point out again too is the difference between playing the computer and another human. When you play the computer, they can often get predictable, and they can do so many stupid things. Like they can not make the pass to the wide open person on the fast break for the layup. They can make extra passes that are pointless that shouldn't even be there. They can stand completely wide open and not shoot. They'll just stand there. And then they'll just run the play that's supposed to be run, etc. And defensively, you can exploit them more often, all of that stuff. When you play a human, they're hitting that person on the fast break, right? They're making decisions that the computer otherwise is not going to make, and it makes the experience is just so much better. But yeah, I did want to say that for anybody listening to this podcast, every single player that I've played with, from Simon Lee to Stildo to Sticky Fingers to Hornets on Fire to you, Andrew, I'm just it's you guys are all great, and
No,
it's just been awesome to play against every single one of you.
yeah, no, it's great, and obviously I enjoy getting on there. I did have a moment of frustration, as I did sometimes do. I had that yesterday when things weren't working out. We did get it working again, which was nice. You mentioned CPU gameplay, and look, I've played against the CPU a lot over the years. Obviously, being a Dynasty guy, and that's the way I've played, or various franchise modes, playing against the CPU, or cooperatively with my cousin against the CPU, and we're just dominating the CPU, dominating the computer. But I did play a game of NBA Live 10 on 360 last night, and it was we've obviously been doing the retro teams and so many ideas to go through there. And I played the 2007 Knicks versus 2007 Bulls, which is probably more of a game that just for me to play. Asking you to take control of the 2007 Knicks is that's a big ask. My apologies to Mike MP3 for ragging on his Knicks there, but I'm sure he can agree that wasn't the best the best year for them, unfortunately. I did play against the CPU, and it was a fun game. I recorded the whole game. I was actually on the exercise bike, getting my cardio in yesterday, playing that game. So, as you know, Action and Bandicam, for that matter, can record off an Elgato. It will record off a capture device, and normally I would use that to do the time shift, to just get the little 15-second clips or 10-second clips, as you do. But because I was on the bike, I just said, oh, I'll just use the Elgato software and record the whole game. So I recorded the whole game, got that 4-point play with Ben Gordon to start the game, which was really cool. Almost missed the free throw because I was trying to compensate for lag that wasn't there, playing on the console instead of Parsec. But it was a really satisfying game. Loved getting those highlights from just recording the whole game to have for posterity, or just to break it up into some highlights. I haven't quite decided what I'll do with that yet. But certainly, yes, I did notice that, to get back to the whole CPU point, is that it was doing things that you wouldn't do. And it was a less competitive game because of that. And you can crank the sliders up and change the sliders and change the difficulty level, but then it just gets cheesy. Whereas with you, it's strategic when we compete. But no, it was still fun to play, but you definitely notice that difference going back to a CPU game of Live 10 after all the competitive games we've played, rather, that there are times when I thought, well, if Derek was controlling the Knicks at the moment, he would be really overachieving with them. He would be just driving with Marbury, he'd be driving with Francis, and just punishing me with Crawford. Crawford did come off the bench and played pretty well in the hands of the AI, but at the same time, you would have really overachieved with those Knicks, but the CPU was a little outmatched, but it was still a very fun game to play.
Well, a couple of things. One, that's not torture for me. I love that Knicks team. I don't care if it didn't work out. They have great video. That's a great video game team.
True.
A lot of guys that can ISO and go one-on-one, whether it be a starting lineup or on the bench. And for NBA Live 10, a game where the post game isn't very strong in that game, I think that they would be a pleasure to use. So I would be open to doing that matchup, actually.
There you go.
Yeah, otherwise, as far as, like you said, compensating for the lag, we talked about this before the call. You're the only player that I've had, that I've connected with on Parsec where the experience, whether, I was the host or the other person was the host, wasn't top-notch. Like Hornets on Fire and Hornets on Fire hosted, I was the client, and we had great games on NBA 2K19. With Sticky Fingers, he hosted today, and I was the client. He was on Wi-Fi, and we had a great game, etc. So I hope we figure that out, because I think that you and I think we will. I think that we're going to get to a point where it's working so good for you that you look forward to using it even more and jumping on and playing games. But yeah, no, we had a great game, I thought, minus some ridiculous computer assistance.
That was weird. The more we've played NBA Live 10, the more we've obviously had this new appreciation for it. But you do notice these little things, these little weird momentum things under the hood. But I did mention to you, we don't usually call timeouts, and I wonder if there's an internal mechanic that halts the momentum doing that, because we don't really do that.
I don't know. I just know that it's now happened several times in a row in different games that we've played. For those who don't know, I uploaded the highlights and shared them on Twitter. This one to my channel, my D4 3 YouTube, and at D4 384 on Twitter. And it was the 2007 NBA playoffs. It was Warriors versus Jazz. I was the Warriors. Andrew was the Jazz. And the highlights came out really good. Like I'm putting together the highlights, and I think I messaged you. I was like, these highlights came out better than we probably thought they would. Some really great dunks, you with Brewer, me with Jason Richardson. Some really nice pull-ups by Fisher, Darren Williams, Jason Richardson, Baron Davis. That end of the third quarter step back three I hit from like 30 feet with Baron Davis. That looked sweet. And so we had this really good experience. But remember how the game started? I couldn't make anything. I'm shooting completely wide open shots all over the floor, brick, and I know I'm releasing it right. I have the highlights. I know I'm releasing it right. And then all of a sudden, in the third quarter, about halfway through, I'm hitting all the shots I was missing. Yeah. And there's definitely something under the hood with that game, momentum-wise, where it kind of takes the control away from the player. And it is a little bit frustrating.
Because it kind of happened to me in the fourth as well, where I was missing shots that I was making earlier in the game.
Yeah, good shots. I think that's where it's frustrating, and also where we have frustrations with, like NBA 2K21. It's when the game takes away the control from the player. When the game takes control of the action, when you feel almost helpless. And we have had those moments with Live 10. So like we said, we've enjoyed revisiting Live 10, and it's better than we remembered, but it definitely still has its shortcomings.
Oh, the exaggerated play and movement sometimes, trying to stop on a dime.
Oh, yeah, like getting dragged in to take so you try to stop on a dime, from 18 feet out. I don't know how many times that happens with me with Monta Ellis, where I tried to, pull up. And actually, one of them ended up being in the highlight reel where it forced me into a spin move and you stuffed me.
Yeah.
Out of bounds. But yeah, you try to pull up for a quick jump shot and the game just the momentum drags you to the hoop. Or you'll try to stop for a three and it drags you into a mid-ranger.
Yep.
That's why I say some of your stuff with lag, I understand it. But at the same time, I think I'm dealing with some of the same stuff you are just from the game mechanic standpoint.
Oh, undoubtedly. Yeah, there are issues with 10. It was not a perfect game. It's a I don't know whether I want to say it's an underrated game. It's perhaps underappreciated now that Live has struggled for so long that people forget that there have been some really good NBA Live releases, that being the last to really qualify as such. I know a lot of people do like NBA Live 19. I was left a bit cold by it for reasons I've gone into on the podcast and in my retrospective for the 25th anniversary of NBA Live. But Live 10, very strong releases. That's why it's been our retro kick for a long time. What's this, at least 2 months that we've been playing this game now?
Yeah, and how many articles have you written about it? Yeah,
Yep.
you know, that's the mark of a game that has something, right?
Yeah.
Like, there is something there that gets you. And it's been really enjoyable, and I don't see us stopping those games anytime soon, especially because we still have so many retro matchups that we can put together. And so Andrew tried to create Julius Erving.
Oh, God, yeah.
Using the create a player system. And I will say the broadcast setting, the broadcast camera view of that Irving you created with the big fro, it's passable. It's passable from the broadcast, like from that angle. Like, if you didn't allow any close-ups, you could say, okay, the body type isn't that bad. He has the fro, all of that stuff. You might be able to put together a fun
He's number
solution.
6.
He's number 6. He's wearing the right jersey, etc. You might be able to put something together. But man, what a weak creative player feature.
I mean, look, I could have gone more in depth with it. I was just very roughly messing around with the sculpting tools, but they are very imprecise, I'll say. They're not shallow, but they're imprecise. That's the best way I'd put it, because you're kind of moving around in the I don't know how you would describe it, kind of the circle, kind of like a chart, like a graph, where you can move between thin and thick and shallow and deep to change the skull shape and the face shape and everything. And I mean, it's there. You don't have to just pick from generic head shapes, but at the same time, it just doesn't feel precise. Like, even if I made that on the 360, trying to get that exact same, then taking it into over Parsec and trying to recreate it on your emulator, trying to get the exact same settings is so imprecise. So that's a problem as well.
I might try to get in there and see if I can make a couple players that were missing for the retro team. See if I can get close. It might be a fun little project. Maybe I'll try to jump on that later tonight. But last thing I wanted to say about Parsec and the games that I played, I want people to understand that, and this is for the modding community, I want people to understand that you create far more memories playing the games than you do modding them. And I'm a modder myself. You know that.
Yeah.
I love modding. But already, just in the last couple months of you and I playing NBA Live 10, we've had a lot of fun. And we've created many memories playing these games, video game legends, good matchups that we can look back on, like the Sonics and Bulls matchup, 05, etc. And I just want people to start playing the games more. I want people to start playing other humans more on the game. So if you're on PC, if you're listening to the NLSC podcast, chances are you're on PC, or you at least you know about modding and playing on PC, etc., other basketball games, etc. I want you to download Parsec and try to connect with other gamers and play some games, because nothing beats it. It's a lot of fun.
The highlights speak for themselves, I think, and how much joy we've had and talked about this on the podcast, and you've been talking about it on Twitter, of course, as well. And it really is cool to see more people getting involved with this and discovering what we've discovered. It's just such a great program now that we've got it working as well, and hopefully even better in the future. I did want to ask before we moved on, you've been playing the 2K19 retro rosters, of course. Do you have a favorite season out of those rosters? Because you played quite a few. You played the '89 Lakers and Knicks, and you've just played the game against Sticky Fingers, the Kings, and the Warriors. Do you have a favorite of the seasons you've played so far?
Well, first off, I want to say that those mods by Sticky Fingers, the scoreboard, and then that graphics mod and everything, and the camera angle we were using, how cool was that?
Indeed.
I mean, that looks just really cool. Like, all that entire setup, the correct courts, jerseys, all of that stuff, cyberfaces. It's just the wonderful world of mods. And he played really well with Mitch Richmond and whatnot, and Dwayne Coswell, actually, in the game that we just played. His favorite season? So I think you could tell by the content that I've been posting on Twitter over the last few months. I've been absolutely obsessed with 80s basketball, with 80s NBA. I've been posting highlights constantly of, from the 89-90 season, 88-89, the 85-86 season, 82-83. For NBA 2K19, they don't go far back enough yet. I think the furthest back we go right now is 88-89, which was the last season of Kareem. Mm-hmm. And I would say that 88-89 and 89-90 right now are my favorite seasons to go back to and play. And once we go back a little bit further with those rosters and we get into like 86-87, the last season of Julius Erving, and then even further back, 85-86, where I can throw Julius Erving, Charles Barkley, and Moses Malone on the floor together with the Sixers. I think those, I'm going to be diving heavy into those and just having a blast with those years. So I'm on this 80s kick right now, so I'll just say point blank 80s, and we'll just go with that. What
Sounds
about
good.
you?
I mean, I guess I'm partial to the 90s, obviously. I think I think that 94 roster really stands out to me because it's such an odd year that looked like it might be a transitional year, obviously, with Michael Jordan retiring in the off season, and then of course he came back in the latter stages of 94-95 and had that second run, at which point I really got into the NBA, and so my nostalgia is very much mid to late 90s in that respect. But that 94 season kind of stands out as one of those overlooked years. And of course, it's the first Rockets championship. They started 15-0 that year and had that run, great run to the championship and Hakeem's first title and the epic 7-game series with the Knicks. The first really big matchup at center in a while was really cool. But there's something about the 94 season that even though it wasn't a hardcore fan at that time. You got into the NBA a few years before I did. It really exploded here in Australia in the couple of years after you got into it, was really with Jordan's comeback and everything. But that 94 season is one of those very interesting seasons to me. And of course, it's also the season depicted in the 16-bit versions of NBA Live 95, which I have a lot of nostalgia for as well.
I really like the 93-94 season, and I'm a really big fan of that Rockets team, the way they played, and the fact that they're very underrated today as far as the talent that they had. Everybody talks about Hakeem, and of course in carry culture like we have now, everybody's like, well, look at the team Hakeem dragged to a title, all that BS. But they had so many good pieces, and Vernon Maxwell was one hell of a player, and Kenny Smith stretched the floor and was one hell of a player, and Otis Thorpe was the perfect power forward, the prototypical power forward that you want, right?
Yeah.
In the 90s, he was he was just amazing for that team. The athletic Robert Horry, not the the one that you remember just shooting top of the key for threes, or the one that you think of as a little bit chubbier, etc. We're talking about the super athletic Robert Horry. There was a lot of good teams in 93-94. The expansion teams were starting to really come into their own. I love the courts. I love the jerseys. Etc. So yeah, I'm a fan of 93-94 as well. So that was really nice that he chose that. When I played with Sticky Fingers today, I didn't say anything about, what season do you want? He just chose the 93-94 roster, and I was glad he did because I don't play that roster too often, and it allowed me to use Latrell Sprewell, Chris Mullin, and Chris Webber all together. So that was fun.
So something else I wanted to bring up before you completely move on from Parsec is that you also played through the 2K servers this past week, which is something that I have a lot of experience in, obviously. Me playing the connector modes in my career, you were playing online head-to-head. But you actually had a better connection peer-to-peer, head-to-head on Parsec than through the servers.
What's wild is so we connected on Parsec first, Simon Lee and I, because both of us probably needed to restart our PCs. We didn't have a good connection. Like it didn't work. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to waste this opportunity to have a session. I still want to get a game in with Simon. So I suggested, let's try the 2K server. So we jumped on NBA 2K21. I used the Pelicans. He used the Nets and on PC, and we played a game. And surprisingly, it worked really well for both of us. We still had a little bit of slight input lag, but you saw the highlights. We're still able to time shots. We had some wild alley-oops, etc., which is just the case with 2K21, just alley-oop central. You can throw alley-oops from everywhere on NBA 2K21, and they're completed constantly. It's just kind of ridiculous. So I'm just like running up the court with Lonzo Ball and throwing the ball backwards to Zion Williamson, who's throwing it down, etc. But we actually had a decent game. Like him and I said in our chat, we were like, listen, the performance wasn't the problem. It's the game. Like, we just didn't really enjoy the game that much. Because there's just a lot of issues and lack of authenticity and just a lot of blah moments. The game lacks feel. I told you about this before the call. There's something that just very blah about NBA 2K21 from a basketball standpoint. So what we did after is we actually got Parsec to work, and we altered a few settings, restarted our computer, got Parsec to work, and we jumped on NBA 2K17 using my UCTR roster. And I was the 07-08 Nuggets. I was the host. He was the 09-10 Lakers. I sucked it up, and I played in 2K Cam because that's what he's used to. Played with real player percentage because that's what I believe he normally uses. And we played a game, and it worked perfect for both of us. It was an awesome experience. And one of his highlights, a spin into a dunk with Kobe, made the top 10 plays of the week, which we'll get into in a second as well, because I want to talk about that. Just amazing submissions this week. But yeah, 2K17 worked amazing for us. He lives in China, and I'm here in the U.S., an hour outside of Boston, and we had an amazing connection. Those highlights were so clean, so smooth, both of us hitting shots, both of us, doing the moves that we wanted and everything. And it beat NBA 2K servers with him in China. So I was just blown away by that. That was just an awesome experience. I'm actually glad you brought that up.
I mean,
it was good stuff.
The 2K servers are a running gag, to the point that 2K has actually addressed it in their games with the some dialogue options you have when you communicate with Ronnie in My Career, where I think it was 2K19, I believe, where he messaged you and says, "Oh, what a great game last night. This is in My Career," and you can write back, "Fix your servers, Ronnie," which is kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like it's the self-awareness to make a joke, but not the self-awareness to actually improve the server performance at all. So
it's a slap in the face. That's a slap in the face for those people who are actually frustrated by it.
It kind of is, yeah. Like it's sort of self-aware, but then not self-aware in other ways. So I know how it goes with the 2K servers. I've obviously been playing a lot of online over the past few years, the online team play modes, and we've tried it as well, head-to-head, and not had the great performance. But you touch on it there. It's not just the servers. I mean, that is a recurring issue. But 2K21, I think it left a lot of us cold. I wrote a Friday 5 article, 5 games with the wrong vibe, which sounds like a kind of out there concept, but it's absolutely true that some games just don't have that right vibe, the right atmosphere and feel. Sometimes they may be mechanically pretty solid and fully featured and everything, but there's just something about them that just feels off. And 2K21 did, especially the current gen version, which is also the PC port, because in large part, it launched when the 2K20 season was still going, thanks to the shutdown and then the bubble. So it launched with 2020 season rosters. If you played My Career, you had to jump into the NBA section with fictional rookies at the start. I mean, of course, they patched in 2021 season rosters later, but if you want to play online, you need to be grinding from day one. So you're playing with these fictional rookies. It just didn't feel right. And I'm finding myself wrapping up my 2K21 gameplay. I still jump in every so often, mostly on PS5, more so than PC these days. But yeah, I'm finding myself really wrapping it up. I've had some fun with it this year, but it really was a game that just didn't have the right vibe.
You know what another huge problem is when you try to play NBA 2K21 online head-to-head, Andrew?
What's that?
You have to use the game's rosters.
Of course, yes.
And so players, you have to use the game's rosters, the game's sliders, everything default. So basically what ends up happening is you're jumping into a game and the players aren't really moving right. They're not playing really like themselves, etc. And it kind of, remember when we tried to jump on and play 2K21?
Yeah.
It's kind of being just like a running through the mud fest.
Yep.
A lot of the time. It's not that great of an experience. So to give you an example too, so I had that great game with Simon Lee, and I'm really glad that he had a great time with it. And we're definitely going to connect again because that was really fun. Came down to the last shot. Artest missed a 3 in the corner to win it. It was just a really good game. A lot of memories created with that game. I connected with King J Mace, 1.6K Mace on Twitter, and we played for a while on NBA 2K16 and then NBA 2K17, etc. And he hadn't played those games, I don't believe, in a while, and we both jumped in and we were just having an absolute blast. Every time we put on those games and we play them, and yes, I do have slider tweaks and whatnot and mods in there, but every time you jump onto those games, you're just like, these are pick up and play fun. Right? And I think that's what NBA 2K21 is missing. And the other thing, too, is those games, 2K16 and 2K17, they just have more authenticity feel. Like, they have more feel. There's more substance to them. There's not as much, like, sucking in, like the game pushing you in certain directions. There's not as much two-man canned animations. The dunks have extra power. You feel better about shooting, about the moves that you do, creating space, all of that stuff. You feel like the computer isn't as dumb, like the AI isn't as bad in those games as far as like on defense and whatnot. And it's just there's so much more jump in and play and enjoy.
People can say, oh, it's just nostalgia, and they can say, oh, everyone hates the latest game and then looks back years later and enjoys it. There's some aspect of that, there's some element of truth to that for some people. People that seem to dislike every new game and then get over it a few years later. There are some people who do that. I'm not going to say that there's not within the basketball gaming community. But by and large, 2K16 and 17 were very well received. You go back and you look at the user reviews and the user Metacritic scores, and they lined up with the professional reviews, with the journalist reviews and everything.
How many times have I talked about that?
Yeah.
How many times have I talked how you go back and you look and you can see some of the old forums here too talking about, and on Operation Sports, the threads talking about 2K17, 2K16, 2K15, and people were just raving about the gameplay and about the things that they liked about it. And of course you had some complaints every now and then.
They weren't perfect,
It's volume. That's why context matters. The volume of complaints and what people are complaining about and all of that stuff. And you can see the lack of passion when people play these new editions of NBA 2K, 2K20 and 2K21. You can see that people are not as into the gameplay anymore for obvious reasons. They got to get away from the canned basketball.
Yeah.
They got to get away from being stuck in the mud. They got to get away from this artificial feel of the game. The game lacks true feeling, in my opinion. It lacks that feel that really makes you want to jump on the sticks and create, great basketball moments.
I mentioned the word vibe, and again, some people might think that's a bit strange to use or a bit out there. And we can talk about the mechanical problems with current games as well. The motion system that was brought in 2K18 is something we've talked about on many occasions, how we've felt that it certainly wasn't implemented properly in 2K18, and subsequent games, those games haven't been as good, building on that foundation as the games that came out immediately preceding 2K18, the 15 to 17 being a very strong run. But there's just something about the vibe of recent games. Look, I enjoyed 2K19. It's probably one of my favorites of the generation. 2K20 I played a lot of, although I had my complaints. And 2K21, yes, I've had some fun with it. But there's just something, you can throw around poetic terms, heart and soul and things like that, and vibe, obviously. But there really is something to that we look forward to those games. They excited us during the preview season, and we'll be talking a bit about the previous season in a moment as well. But there was something very exciting. We looked forward to those games coming out. They delivered when we got them, and we had some hours upon them. Again, I spent 2,700 or 2,800 hours with 2K17 alone, just on PS4. A lot of that playing online with the guys, obviously, with the NLSC Thrill-Ho. But we really enjoyed those games. We genuinely did enjoy those games. It wasn't just nostalgia. We enjoyed it at the time as well. What we enjoy now, looking back, is the same things we enjoyed back then. We just haven't felt that in recent years. And you might say, yes, you're getting old, you're getting jaded, old heads and all this stuff. But it's not just that. I mean, yes, I will admit to some cranky old man tendencies, but at the same time, Derek, we're missing some of that heart and soul in recent games.
Oh, it's okay to say it's missing heart. It is. Their direction has changed.
Yeah.
The direction of the games has changed, and unfortunately, the game from a gameplay standpoint has declined in many different ways to take away that fun in those great experiences. And we haven't lost our love for basketball gaming. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right?
Sure.
Like you and I, how many games have we played of NBA Live 10? How many times have I tried to connect with people and played games of NBA 2K17, 16, 19, etc. And we're going to be playing some other games as well. We haven't lost our love for basketball gaming and for competition. And it's not just nostalgia. We're playing these games. And that's what needs to be recognized here. Like I said, there's something missing in the newer games. And it's not just with us. Like, it's not just missing to us. It's missing, for a good portion of the population, in my opinion.
I mean, look, you talked about the lack of authenticity in the default rosters with retro teams and whatnot. We've had some more authentic retro experiences in NBA Live 10, playing with makeshift teams without editing any rosters and any ratings and so forth to really... I mean, if we were to do that with Live 10, which we could do, because we've set up the fantasy team's roster to really be flexible and set up these matchups. I mean, how long does it take to set up a fantasy matchup? A few number edits, maybe a couple of minutes, 5 minutes before we start playing?
Possibly. I mean, we get into the games really quick.
Yeah.
So it's been, I got to tell you something. That fantasy team's option is amazing.
Fantastic, yeah. No, I love it, and it's. But yeah, we've had some, even with some players being a little bit underrated in the default rosters of NBA Live 10, we've had more authentic experiences. Okay, yes, we've had some missing players, but then again, so do the retro teams in 2K. So there you go.
Right. At least we don't have fakes yet. No fakes. No all guys on looking the same with headbands on.
I kind of want to do it. I kind of want to just create some fake placeholders and just have them there on the bench for the 99 76ers. If we do the 99 Lakers and 76ers, just have these fakes on the bench just for fun, just like a 3-minute quarter game or something, just to have some weird footage of it.
Yeah, that reminds me of the Live King doing that Live 19 video of like number 98 Jordan
or number 8. Yeah.
I do want to say something though, because this episode is almost 100% about the community and sharing experiences with the community and gameplay and whatnot. How about that top 10? How about all the submissions we got from the top 10 for the top 10 plays for this week?
I think that may be the top 10 so far.
I do too. I believe so. I think this is week 7. So this is the 7th week in a row we've had a top 10, which is wild because I feel like we just started it. I can't believe we're about 2 months in.
The weeks go quickly, yeah.
But when I get an email with a highlight, it just gets me so pumped up. And, we're getting highlights from so many different people, from at B-Ball Video Games, from, King J Mace, from Simon Lee, from Stildo 33, and all of these different people, and from Teddy Bear the Gamer. And how about that number 1 this week? The behind the back into a dunk for the WNBA action. I love seeing all the highlights. I love people getting excited about seeing themselves in the highlights. I love the fact that nobody's complaining about my placement because I put together the top 10 each week, and it's just been great to bring the community together. And how many times outside of this top 10 that we've been doing for the last 7 weeks, how many times have you seen a top 10 like it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you just don't see anymore. There's a couple. Yeah. And it's not community based, and that's what I like about it. That it's offering the community a chance. And look, everybody has access to YouTube or whatever, or Twitch. There's more platforms than ever that people can take control of their content. But I think there's something special about submitting it to a compilation and having it spotlighted and done in the way that you're doing it, with that slick presentation and everything. That people really enjoy seeing it there and being able to check out other people's highlights as well, compiled like that. And set forth to, that great music from NBA Live 99, obviously. So there's something, I think, that the community aspect is something that we enjoy, obviously, but the community is enjoying it too, and that is the main thing.
Yeah, I think it's been my goal I want to say over the last few months is to just get people playing, get people sharing, talking, get people on the stick, sharing those experiences. And between the top 10, people sending me highlights, the Parsec gameplay, connecting the community from all around the world, playing games and everything. It's just been, I got to be honest with you, I've been kind of obsessed with it. It's just been really enjoyable. And I hope people just don't say, oh, well, Derek will, D for free, he'll connect with me. Reach out to other people. I'd love to see Stildo 33 and Hornets on Fire play a game and save the highlights, right? Or even just get on and play a game and then tell me about it. Like, connect with each other.
Yeah,
get together.
And talk about it in the forum, obviously. Cheap plug in the forum, yeah.
But exactly. So, but no, the top 10 has been great. I love all the highlight submissions. I love how excited people are getting about it, etc. And I love the wide variety of games that we're getting. Live 2001, NBA Street Volume 2, 2K21, 2K17, etc. It's just, I look forward to doing it every week. Let's put it that way.
And the fantasy teams mode in NBA Live 10. And yes, obviously it'd be great if we can play some other games, and we're going to try and get that working for you and I. But the NBA Live 10 sessions have, by and large, been a lot of fun, very competitive, clean sportsmanship there, obviously, as we've said before. But I also want to shout out to Cavs4872 in the forum and the NLSC community. Commented on my Webeck Wednesday article about creating retro teams, where I went through all of the teams that I've been able to create so far that I have listed ready for us to play with, and I really seem to enjoy that article. Says that he does it himself, recreating the 2007 Nets and Cavs, and playing that because that was a second round series from the 2007 playoffs. LeBron versus the trio of Vince Carter, Richard Jefferson, and Jason Kidd. That's one that we have on the list there. That'd be a fun one to play as well. And he also mentions the 2009 Bulls and Celtics series, which is a tremendous series, and another one that we will probably play at some point.
Yeah, we have to, because that's what a ridiculous... That's playoff basketball, by the way. Not whatever this has been this year. That is playoff basketball. I also want people, just a reminder, if you ever connect with Stildo33, who's at @1KennyKenny on Twitter, he's a trash talker. I just want to warn you. He talks trash, and before the last game we played, when he was the Indiana Pacers, he was like, "Guess what time it is?" Made me answer. It's Miller time, and he will talk trash to you. But it's friendly, and he's funny as hell, and it's really fun to play against him. It's friendly trash talk. But I don't think there's a game that we have played where he hasn't trash talked. So just fair warning.
I mean, if you can back it up.
He competes. He's good. Like Stildo 33 is he's very good at the games. He did very good in a game where he was the Suns. I think I pulled it out at the end, but he was the Suns, the 92-93 Suns, using Barkley, Marley, KJ, and whatnot. And he was playing fantastic, especially for the first half. So no, he can definitely back up some of his trash. But more importantly, when somebody's doing stuff like that and they're trash talking, I know that they're really into the game and really having fun. And I can tell that he's really enjoying the experience, and that's what it's all about.
And as far as NBA Live 10 goes, if we do recreate that 2009 series, maybe we should do that as a series, a best of 7.
I would do that. See, and that's the other thing I brought up in the Discord for the 2K19 rosters we have is, guys, we could do a tournament. We could do playoff series, and we could go against each other. We could get the community involved in this. So I'm trying to find a way to work this type of thing out. But yeah, if it was just for you and I, that would be cool. We could do a full 7-game series, Celtics versus Bulls. That would be fun.
Just to see how it goes, whether we can rewrite history one way or the other. Maybe the Celtics, maybe it's 4-1. Maybe it's maybe the Bulls can pull it out. Who knows? I'd be up for doing it.
Yeah, a video game can't duplicate some of the shots that were made in that series.
That's true.
They just can't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the real-life action is more exciting than any video game can duplicate. So
they have their limitations, but obviously we still enjoy our virtual hardware exploits. So I did mention wrapping up 2K21. We're actually, if we look at the rumored release date for NBA 2K22, and it's probably fairly accurate, certainly in the vicinity, we are about 2 months away from when it's going to be coming out. We know nothing about this game. The preview season hasn't tipped off. Obviously, once again, because of the pandemic and the late start of the 2021 season, we are still in the 2021 season. The finals have not happened yet as of this recording. Yeah, it's hard to get enthused about the preview season these days. And sometimes I think, well, yes, cranky old man, cranky old Andrew, I've been covering covering basketball games on the NLSC as of 20 years as of this year. So I've gone through a lot of preview seasons, NBA Live and NBA 2K. Maybe I'm feeling a bit jaded, but there's just not enough to really sink your teeth into during the preview season these days. And going back to previous years on the podcast, there were so many times when, probably to our detriment, we said, "Oh, there's no news this week," and had to find other things to talk about, which you and I have no problem with, clearly, with all the shows we've done, and some of the early ones going over 2 hours, obviously. But previous seasons, they ain't what they used to be.
We used to get excited about all the little tidbits of information.
Exactly.
That get around this time and whatnot. And all we have now is just like speculation and leaked covers and rumors and all of that stuff. So yeah, I think it can get frustrating, and the fact that we know why they do it, right? And it's to get as many pre-orders as possible most of the time. It's to basically get people sitting on the edge of their seats, in anticipation and all of that stuff. It's a lack of transparency that's unfortunately plagued the series now for quite a few years.
So there is another rumored leak at the moment. We've talked about the Luka Doncic situation in previous shows. So there's a new leak that's putting out a cover there with Durant, Dirk, and Kareem. And it's got some interesting artwork there. It mentions a release date of September 10th, which is certainly in the vicinity of when it usually comes out. And it also mentions vague mentions of pre-order bonuses of 100,000 VC, which has been pretty standard bonus content, unnamed. Which, again, this all sounds like something you would expect to see. It is the usual pre-order bonuses. So even if it is a guess, it's probably going to turn out to be accurate. But this does come from 2K Intel. But other than that, no one else is really reporting anything. There are some leaks. Interesting that they're showing Durant, Dirk, and Kareem when no presence of Doncic. Of course, he could be a regional cover player. That has happened before. But then, yeah, that doesn't line up with some of the previous rumors. But even if this is true, we are 2 months away from the game and we know nothing about it.
First off, that fake cover, if it is fake, is great artwork. I actually think I actually hope that's the Legends cover for NBA 2K22 because it looks fantastic.
Very cool.
And it is very possible that they could have a three-way Legends cover and include a current player in it. So it could be Kareem, Durant, and Dirk, with Dirk being the main, obviously, in the front there, and then have their regular cover of Doncic. So I still think that it's possible that is real. A lot of places reported on it, gamesradar.com, etc. Like a lot of places were talking about it. And usually when that happens, I feel like a lot of times there is some realness to it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If that is the Legends cover, I applaud it. I think it's a good one. And I understand why they would include a current player in it. So I think that it is possible.
I mean, multiple cover players, multiple editions would not be unprecedented for 2K.
Right, exactly. It's happened, like NBA 2K13. The three covers, the three cover players or whatnot. And then
16 as well, yeah.
And NBA 2K16 as well, which NBA 2K16 still has the wildest intro I've almost ever seen in a basketball video game.
Very creative, yeah. That's actually my current avatar in the forum is taken from that. The Michael Jordan on his throne with the glowing red eyes. Very ominous.
Yeah, very interesting because the graphics depicted in that NBA 2K16 intro have nothing to do with the actual graphics that are in the video game. So it's very rare to see. It's just like an artistic approach, and I thought it was a home run. I actually think it's really.
I kind of didn't like it at first. I will admit because it was sort of out there, but it's definitely grown on me.
Yeah, I think it's something different, and I think that it was a good way to, they really focused on Michael Jordan there as the final opponent and whatnot, and I thought that was just I thought it was very creative, and I thought it was tastefully done. Let's put it that way. I thought it was well done.
I mean, it's more creative than the no intro we've had the last few years.
You know how I feel about that.
Mm.
Give us an option to turn it off. If like, give us an intro, get us excited, have that awesome intro, but just have something in the settings where we can turn it off so it doesn't show up again.
Yeah,
If we
that's all,
don't want to.
that's all you need. But as for 2K22, I mean, we've speculated on it. We've talked about some of the things we want to see. We'll get the previews, the blogs, the developer blogs. I think the other thing that's really soured me on it is reading the developer blogs, reading the broken promises, reading in subsequent years, them being honest about things they were dishonest about in the previous year's blogs. It's very hard to take them at face value.
It really is. We already talked about it, like the developer blog thing where that said that they couldn't achieve good foot planning before. Like on the next-gen developer blog when they absolutely did in 2K15, 16, and 17, saying that they couldn't achieve it on PS4 and now they could on PS5. And then the PS5 foot planning isn't even as good as 2K17, 16, and 15. So like it's little things like it. Well, it's not very little. It's kind of a big lie. But it's lies like that just kind of put a sour taste in our mouths. So I agree. I don't know what I believe anymore as far as like when I read those developer blogs.
You go back to the 2K18 to 19 blogs, which is my go-to example here because it was the most egregious of walking back on what they said the previous year. In the 2K18 gameplay blogs, they said, we've removed some two-man animations in the paint. This is by design. They were hyping it up as this improvement to paint play. And then the 2K19 blogs openly admitting that they removed those because there were problems with the motion system in its first implementation in 2K18, and that they put a band-aid fix in for missed layups. They basically admitted what they said the previous year was an improvement was a band-aid fix for something that wasn't working properly. And I've always been really frustrated. I wrote an article about it. So I wrote a lot of articles, obviously. But I've been so frustrated that it didn't gain more traction. And we know why. We know because a lot of influencers are shills. Let's put it out there. But it didn't gain any traction. This lie that exposed that developer blogs, you can't believe them. And yet the developer blog comes out every year and people say, oh, it's great and believe that this is going to happen. And look, sometimes it does happen. I'm not saying that everything in developer blogs is a lie. I'm not going to slander them that way. But we've seen some very big lies exposed, and yet people have just stuck their head in the sand. How does this not gain more traction?
Yeah, and I think the thing is that you will never win the info and influence war. You're never going to win the information and influence war.
Yeah.
Because the thing that you see in the developer blogs, what happens after a developer blog comes out? All of the big publications, all of the big websites, all of that stuff, the reviewers, all of that, jump all over the developer blog and promote all of those same words, right? And they say things like, oh, this is what they're saying, and this is going to be a welcome change, and this is a welcome idea, and all of that stuff. And they just continue to reinforce all of those words, whether they're accurate or not, whether it's hypocritical or contradictory or not. And that's the problem. Because, and little Andrew, no offense, of the NLSC, how are you going to compete with Forbes?
Exactly. Yeah.
The information and influence. How are you going to compete with IGN? How are you going to compete with
YouTube with 10 million subscribers, whatever. Yeah.
How are you going to compete with, even though your words are accurately calling them out and whatnot, how are you going to compete with that YouTuber who has 500,000 subscribers?
Yeah.
Or 300,000 subscribers who makes millions of impressions for each video, etc. And that's why, if they control the information and influence, how are you supposed to, accurately, how are you supposed to call out all of the BS and get people to also call them out?
Yeah. Exactly. And this is why the games are in the state that they are. I mean, the lack of competition doesn't help either, as we've discussed on many occasions, and we will stick to that because people can say, oh, we don't need NBA Live or anybody else. And then they'll complain about 2K. Well, nothing's going to change without competition. And certainly nothing will change without the community and influencers holding 2K to account.
Yeah, and unfortunately what's going to end up happening is if we continue down this road, people are just going to continue to get taken advantage of.
Definitely.
To be honest with you. And that's why it's steadily been that way since the NBA 2K18, especially because we had a much better feeling about 2K and the series and whatnot in 2K17 and prior. This really kicked off.
Absolutely, and people can say that it's changed, it's nostalgia, as we said before. No, go back and look at the comments at the time. Yes, there's always complaints. Some legitimate, some more reasonable than others, but people were enjoying the game.
And that's the thing is go onto those old Operation Sports forums, go into the archives on NLSC and look at what people were saying. It's night and day different. Go look at those Metacritic scores and go look at the user comments about it and whatnot. So yeah, like I said, they've been going down this road for a while, and unfortunately, the biggest influencers they kind of control. Yeah, that's the problem. But yeah, it's something we've covered so many times before, but it seems very relevant to talk about it again, especially this time of year where we're going to start getting those developer blogs.
NBA 2K22 obviously coming out. Whether that date is correct, I would say that if it's not correct, it's a very good guess. There could be some accuracy here. We'll probably know in the next few weeks. We will, of course, cover it on the site and talk about it on the podcast moving forward. I'm guessing we might see something during the finals, a teaser or something. I'm surprised we haven't seen a pre-order link yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, are we going to kill Live 22 now? Was I wrong? Remember I said that, I was sticking to my guns and thought we were going to get NBA Live 22? Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, EA Play...
Which is a damn shame. Yeah.
They've mentioned other games that EA Play, and people have holding out hope for Live, which, look, I'm not going to dump on that because I'd love to hold out that hope too, but maybe I am just too jaded at this point.
I don't know. You know what, though? With Parsec, and we're going to get it to work a little bit better, there's always going to be something for us to play. And that's the beauty of having a catalog of games and being willing to go back and play something and you're not relying on online, like Park Play or the online connected modes and all of that stuff. So if you really think about it, you and I are going to be fine. So we'll figure it out.
And because we're crazy collectors, we'll get the games anyway. So we're maybe part of the problem.
Exactly. I was telling Sticky Fingers this because I was playing NBA. I think he made a comment about NBA Street Volume 2. And I played King J Mace on that, on the Dolphin emulator for GameCube. But I have that game, like the physical copy of the game. I've had a GameCube for a long time. So, like, I'm a collector like you are. And, like, my collection is really big. So it feels nice to be able to jump onto these games, too, online and play these games with you or other people and host these games and whatnot, knowing that I also have the physical copy, so I feel good about it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Speaking of which, just before we move on to the mailbag, I did just buy a copy of the PC version of Slam and Jam 96.
There you go. And I already talked about that game recently with you. I think we talked about that about 10, 15 different podcasts ago and whatnot. Underrated. Very, very good gameplay. I got to be completely honest with you. Like, I enjoy the gameplay. I wish it had more depth, but it has good gameplay.
If I'm remembering correctly, I believe that was actually created by the same, maybe not the same team, but certainly the same studio as Kobe Bryant and NBA Courtside. Again, another game that you and I have enjoyed over the years.
Yeah, I gotta play more Courtside, to be honest with you. They made that Courtside 2002 actually was the number one play of the week in week 6, and people really enjoyed those highlights. I got some comments on them, but yeah, that game produces some pretty awesome stuff.
Yes, so I was actually right. Left Field Productions developed the game and published by Crystal Dynamics back in the day.
I think the thing about Slam and Jam 96 is they could have done wonders if they had the NBA license.
And I suppose it is why we don't see the unlicensed games outside of some indie titles, obviously. That the idea of a fictional game that would have so much sandbox options with modding and editing and customization, but just have this really great gameplay, the NBA sells. And it's why when people say having a separate playground game for 2K or dropping the NBA from NBA Live, you can't. That is the draw.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I talked about that at length on a previous show. The NBA is the draw. Even if the NBA is not doing as well, even if it's full of conflict, even if the NBA isn't as popular as it once was or anything like that, the NBA is the main draw. So That's what these kids look up to. That's what these kids look forward to seeing highlights of. The NBA will always be the main draw.
And if not the NBA, you at least need to have, it needs to be college or EuroLeague or something. It needs to have some kind of license to sell to people.
Yeah, exactly. I think a game like Slam and Jam 96 where it's just Magic and Kareem, and then I believe there's a worthy lookalike in the game with goggles.
Yep.
But with a game with just Magic and Kareem and a bunch of other players, it kind of leaves a blah taste in your mouth as far as like when you jump on the sticks, because it's just missing that authenticity, and it's just really weird having Magic Johnson run with a bunch of fakes.
It is, and it's like a Michael Jordan in flight.
I still have never played that game.
Still never played it.
I gotta get on that. And if you haven't played Double Dribble Playoff Edition, you need to get on that. So maybe that will be a goal for both of us.
We can play that and compare notes from games we played growing up back in the day. And now it is that time of the week, Derek, where we open up our mailbag and answer questions and talk about topics that are suggested by our awesome listeners. Shout out to Trent at Cystic_Jedi on Twitter. Asked us, are you guys going to play the Space Jam and New Legacy game on Game Pass? No, it's not a full-on basketball video game, but it looks like you use basketballs and moves during the fighting. So, yeah, I suppose we'll start off answering the question. I don't have Game Pass, and I think I'll actually, having seen some of the previews, I think I'll also pass on the game, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's a movie that I don't think should have been recreated, and it's a video game that I will not play. Let's just put it that way. It's a beat-em-up style game. I'm not into any of the new beat-em-up style games. I don't really feel like running around in a world beating up people with LeBron James. I saw some of the gameplay through the gameplay trailer. One thing, it was kind of a nice added touch, is that they used retro graphics. So the graphics in the video game look like they come from Super NES, basically. Like it looks like a Super Nintendo game.
That always resonates these days, that retro style.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. It's kind of like it's what would be called indie now. It's like an indie style looking game. But it's definitely, the gameplay doesn't interest me. Space Jam 2, A New Legacy, just doesn't interest me at all, the front of the movie either. So I'll be passing on it. And again, the genre, like the beat 'em up style, that just doesn't do it for me. I'm more into, and I think I talked about this on the prior podcast, just that little mini game, the basketball game that's in the Tokyo 2020 sports Olympics game. You know, that basketball game?
That looked okay.
Yeah, I bought it off Steam and whatnot. And I'm more interested in that because it's actual basketball. It's full court, 5-on-5. And sure, it's limited. And sure, it's just a mini game within the Tokyo Olympics 2020 PC game. But yeah, I'm more interested in that than I am than like a beat 'em up style Space Jam, LeBron James going around punching things. Like, that just doesn't do anything.
I have seen worse basketball games than what you showed me in Tokyo 2020.
I got to tell you, as a standalone game, that Tokyo sports game, the basketball game, that, and I'm going to upload gameplay of that at some point. As a standalone game, that could do well if they made it a little bit deeper gameplay-wise. It's not bad. The thing is that the Tokyo game, I know we're getting off track of Space Jam, but the Tokyo Olympics basketball game, it's missing dribble moves. Like you can't do any dribble moves. So they'd have to add that in if they made it a standalone game. And they'd have to add like a post-up option and whatnot, so you could actually like post up. But they have the bones right there for a game that I think would do incredibly well on Steam as a standalone, or on console as a standalone game. Give it some customization options. Give it a season mode. It doesn't need to have real players or anything like that. I think that people would play that game.
It looks pretty solid, but like you say, you do need to have those deeper mechanics if it's more than just a mini game. So Tokyo 2020, the unexpected basketball gaming experience of 2021, right there.
You know why I'm sad? I'm pathetic. So I usually do get Olympic games and whatnot, because I remember the Summer Olympics games from the 90s that I absolutely loved. And even like the Tiny Toons Wacky Sports Challenge, where they had like Olympic events and stuff like that. Those games like that, I always loved them, and I usually try to pick them up when they're available. But the only reason I spent $40 US dollars, $40 on that game, was for the basketball portion, even though I knew it was a mini game, and that's how pathetic I am. I was like, you know what? I know this is only going to be a mini game. It's going to have absolutely no depth, etc. But because it has basketball in it, and I'm craving just trying a new basketball game, I'm going to buy it. So I bought it.
I mean, I spent more than $3 on kids sports basketball. It was $5, but so I'm not going to judge
That's
any. I'm not going to judge anybody for their collecting habits, especially when it comes to basketball gaming. But you talk about that and playing other games, because obviously we do play other games. As passionate as we are about basketball and basketball gaming, we do have our other favorites that we play and mention from time to time. And there were those great games that spun off into creative concepts that really have become probably more indie these days than AAA titles. And unfortunately, we don't always see that creativity. But even going back to Space Jam: The New Legacy game, it's not appealing to us for various reasons. People seem to be enjoying it, which is cool. But it does remind me a lot of those games that would license a player. Shaq Fu comes to mind, obviously, and they did make the new Shaq Fu. Saber Interactive, who of course make Playground, NBA 2K Playgrounds 2, original Playgrounds, and WWE Battlegrounds, of course. They made the Shaq Fu Legacy Reborn, which funnily enough, people got excited about that, because Shaq Fu, the original game, has a very dubious legacy. It is considered one of the worst games of all time. There's been some people who defend it, saying, oh, it's not that bad. I certainly don't think it's very good. There was... Do you remember that initiative a few years back? Or maybe probably more than 10 years now, really, but the initiative to find and destroy every cartridge of Shaq Fu that they could?
Yeah, wasn't there something, too, about, like, a landfill?
It could have been. Or, like the ET,
yeah.
like the situation?
Yeah, that type of thing. Yeah, I got to tell you that it wasn't received well.
No.
But I do want to say something. You can't hate the main character. And I'm not saying I hate LeBron James, but I don't enjoy LeBron James. Like, I won't feel good about conquering the world, beating up things with LeBron James. Like, that's not going to do anything for me. But by the way, if I want to play a beat 'em up style game, I'll play Double Dragon. Or a game like that. That, like, throwing an NBA player into a situation where he's beating up aliens, and an NBA player that I'm not particularly fond of, why is that going to do anything for me? That's the thing. So
that's right.
Yeah,
I mean, when it is based on that single player, you do, as you say, you do have to be very fond of that player to really care. I mean, you look at a game like
or at least be neutral, right?
Yeah.
Or at least be neutral. Like, you don't have to love the main character, but at least be neutral on him.
But you look at a game like Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City, which is a side-scrolling platformer with some very weird level design. I covered that in a Way Back Wednesday. It's one of those games. It's very similar to Michael Jackson's. What was it? Was it Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, the Genesis game?
It was Michael. Yeah, I believe it was Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Which, by the way, I played that, and it's not that bad from a gameplay perspective. It's not that bad.
I kind of put them in the same category, that you've got this platformer starring a famous MJ, funnily enough, for the two of them, and it obviously there is Michael Jackson's attacks are based on music, on his music. Michael Jordan's attacks are based on basketball in this platform game. Kind of these weird far out scenarios on both of them. Side-scrolling levels that you're going back and forth in ages to get through. It's one of those mid-90s games that was designed like that, artificial length with some of the levels there, the level design. But it's something we saw a lot then, and of course Shaq Fu again, which is a fighting game, a tournament fighter game, isn't it? It's a tournament fighter, isn't it? Shaq Fu?
It is, I believe.
Yeah,
it's been a long time. It's been a long time. I just know it wasn't received well.
So you have these spin-off concepts starring a popular celebrity or athlete that you have. So it kind of harkens back to that, and in that respect, the retro style is very appropriate. But those games, I mean, they were competent. Like you say, the Moonwalker was perhaps better than it had any right to be. Chaos in the Windy City, decent, but it was really about the celebrity that kind of. And that's how video games work. I mean, we can talk a lot about how video games have gone in a bad direction with microtransactions, recurrent revenue mechanics, and all kinds of problems that we've talked about before. But there was an issue with the problem with licensed games, as TV Tropes calls it, back in the 90s, where you would have a famous a celebrity or a movie or something, and the game just wasn't very good. It was really banking on the fact that it was a popular license.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, and let's go back to character, right? So we loved Michael Jordan growing up,
Mm.
both of us. Me living an hour outside of Boston, still loved Michael Jordan, still idolized Michael Jordan, thought he was the greatest, etc. Still do to this day. I think that sold a lot of copies based on just being having Michael Jordan on it.
No doubt.
And I think that going through a world like that, when you're using somebody that you're fond of, that fully respect, and that you think is great on the basketball court too, as well. Using somebody that you're more fond of will make you stay on those games longer and actually play them. And I've played Chaos in the Windy City, and I don't think it's the worst game. But I would rather play that than I would, a beat 'em up style LeBron James beating up aliens game. So yeah, I think that some of those older games actually, in my opinion, hold up better today than most people think. The Chaos in the Windy Cities, the Michael Jackson Smoothwalker, even the Double Dragons and whatnot, those type of games, because there's still a lot of people playing the indie games on Steam.
True.
And a lot of them downloading them on on their PlayStations and Xboxes and whatnot. A lot of these, the side scrollers and whatnot that are still being released. So I still think that those games can do very well today, and I also think those games often hold up far better than sports games from back then.
Well, they do, because they're not trying to realistically depict the sport.
Right, exactly. I mean, it can be silly in some of the graphics and mechanics and still be super fun gameplay wise, where in sports there's so much strategy involved and so many different moving parts, etc., that it's harder to replicate, but harder to do back then.
A big problem, and it goes to those expansions into other genres, obviously. Also the fact that it's not basketball. So if you're a basketball fan, it's a Michael Jordan game, but are we playing basketball? Not really. So it's kind of like that, and which is, again, not to say that it's a horrible, unplayable game. It and Moonwalker certainly have their charm, but I think whenever you just have a game that is related to a basketball player, even a basketball game like a Michael Jordan in Flight, like a Slam and Jam 96 or Slam and Jam 95, its predecessor, you do miss or a David Robinson's Supreme Court. You miss having the other players. You want to have that. You want to play with NBA players, all NBA players. Who are these fictional players? Why is Michael Jordan battling aliens in the sewers of Chicago? So you miss the basketball in those games, and even in the basketball games, you miss having other players. So it's nice to have that. Barkley's Shut Up and Jam is obviously another one. It's the fact that it's kind of a mediocre Jam clone, at least in my opinion, doesn't help it any. But you need something a little bit more. So I think that's why those games can sometimes fall short.
Right. I think that those games are actually sometimes better without the NBA player in them. If you're just going to go all out, I mean, if you're going to just have fake players throughout the rosters, just go all out and make it
like a Dunk Lords, for example.
And whatnot. Yeah, exactly, like a Dunk Lords, exactly.
Have original characters.
Or Double Dribble Playoff Edition. Right, exactly. Double Dribble Playoff Edition is still a 5-on-5 simulation basketball game, if you want to call it simulation. But there's no real NBA players in it. I mean, they tried their damnedest to make guys look like Horace Grant and Michael Jordan and everything, and they succeeded in some ways. But at the same time, just give us those fake teams and those fake players and make that be the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's again one of those things they did back in the day, just slapping a popular celebrity, popular athlete into a game and trying to sell it that way. It's and even when it was just that player and fictional players, you miss the rest of the league, because that was the appeal. But thank you to Trent, Sister_Jedi, for that question. Obviously, yes, probably not really our cup of tea as far as the new Legacy game, Space Jam New Legacy game, but it did lead us to reminisce about some other weird and wonderful games.
Yeah, let's put it this way: there is a 0% chance that I'm buying that game. If it's for free, I'm not playing it. So if that answers your question, Trent, I'm sorry, it's so negative.
You couldn't pay Derek to play it.
Basically, you could try to PayPal me and say, listen, I'll give you $50, and if you just play this game, and I'm not going to play it.
So thank you once again for the questions. That being said, that has brought us to the end of episode number 382 of the NLSC podcast. We hope you enjoyed tuning in and listening to us talk about basketball video games, past and present. The NLC podcast comes out every week on Sundays on the NLSC, which is nv-live.com, of course. We're also on all the major podcatching apps and platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, to name just a few. On those platforms, search for NLC Podcast, look for our logo, that will be us. And as always, feel free to leave us a hopefully positive review on Apple Podcasts. And since we are wrapping up here, Derek, where can everyone find you on socials, and any other final words or announcements this week?
First off, we definitely plan on recording Holding Court with D for 3 episode 19 tomorrow. That's the hope, if our schedules line up and Andrew has enough sleep in him in order to be able to be available for it. We definitely are separated by quite a bit of a time difference.
15 hours or so, yeah.
Yeah, but we definitely try to make it work, and we've done a pretty good job of making this podcast work and whatnot. So keep an eye out for that. Holding Court with D for 3. It's on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, CLNS Media, Amazon Audible, etc. Keep an eye on my YouTube. I've definitely been uploading and the NLSC YouTube, because we've been uploading a lot of gameplay videos, online head-to-head videos, clashes between members of the NLSC community, etc. Go watch those highlights. They're a lot of fun to watch, a lot of good things happening, a lot of mods. So definitely check that out. Follow me on Twitter at D4384, where I'm the most active. My gaming channel on Twitter at D43G. And a team member over on the NLSC, posting a lot of content lately, so get at me on there. My name on the NLSC is D43, and I'm also on Instagram, D4384.
Definitely connect with Derek and me, of course. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC's social media handles are the NLSC on both Facebook and Twitter. On Instagram, we are NLSC Basketball. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, give a look to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that is all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.